Okay. Before I start talking, I will invite everyone to mute yourselves so that we can hear the speakers. And I will welcome you to tonight's virtual launch of the Kenyan Review's Jan-Feb issue, which is packed with beautiful work. I have a visual written by brilliant contributors, 3 of whom we will feature tonight: Cameron Awkward Rich, Lan Samantha Chang, and Kate Marvin. I am Elizabeth Dark, Associate Director of Programs for the Kenyan Review, and we are delighted to have you with us this evening. Nicole Terez Dutton, our editor, will begin our program in a moment, but first I want to tend to a couple of details to help guide you through your time with us this evening. Starting with closed captioning. If you would like closed captioning, you can click the CC button at the bottom of the screen, and it will be available to you. If at any point you experience technical difficulties, our Kenyan Review intern Ocean is keeping an eye on the chat and is ready to assist you if you want to private message them there. And they will also be posting helpful links in the chat throughout the evening, so keep your eyes open for those. The chat will remain open during the reading for your encouraging comments to our readers, and following the reading, we will take some time for questions from you. So as you're listening to the readers, please consider what questions you might have for them and maybe jot them down before they leave your mind and you're listening to the next person. As an audience member, you are welcome to keep your camera on during the reading, or you can turn it off. Whatever you choose, please do keep yourself muted until we get to the Q&A time. And if you're called on to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. I believe that is all I have, so I will now pass it on to Nicole Terez Dutton, the Kenyan Review's Editor-in-Chief.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited for this evening and excited for the readings. And I'm also excited for this issue, which, as Elizabeth said, is out in the world. And, you know, we're very, very proud of it. As is everything we do at the Kenyan Review, this is certainly a labor of love. And I'm happy to see that some of our editors are here today. Elliot Holt, I see, I'm scanning through this list. Kathy Aguero, Sergey is here. So, you know, these are all people who worked incredibly hard for an incredibly long time to put together this book. So let me just go ahead and introduce our readers tonight. We're going to have 3 readings. All of the readers are going to read for about 10 minutes. And then, as Elizabeth said, we're going to have some time for Q&A. And we're starting with Cameron Awkward Rich. Cameron Awkward Rich is the author of 2 collections of poetry, Sympathetic Little Monster and Dispatch. His creative work has been supported by fellowships from Cave Canem, the Watering Hole, and the Lan Foundation. Also a scholar of trans theory and expressive culture in the US, Cameron earned his PhD from Stanford University's program in modern thought and literature. His more critical writing can be found in Signs, Trans Studies Quarterly, American Quarterly, and elsewhere, and has been supported by fellowships from Duke University's program in Feminist, Gender, and Sexuality Studies and the ACLS. His book, The Terrible We, Thinking with Trans Maladjustment, is forthcoming from Duke University Press in fall 2022. Presently, he's an assistant professor of women, gender, sexuality studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Cameron, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Elizabeth and Nicole, for assembling us here, Ocean for keeping us all here, hopefully, if the tech works, and to all of you for being in this room. I just put a link into the chat. It's a link which is just a link to the poems that I'm going to read, just in case following along that way will make it more accessible to you. And I'm sort of in that sort of brain dead end of a teaching day way. So I'm going to not talk, and instead I'm just going to read 5 poems to you, 2 of which are poems that are published in the issue, and all of which come from a project that I don't exactly yet know what it is. So there's kind of a lot of repetition because I'm still working that out. So poem 1. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And because I could not drive, because I swore I'd never, I sat in the waiting room, slick and winded and helmet addled. I was there to start a new life. On the good days, my high school girlfriend would write me letters. describing weekend plans, evasion tactics, dreams of a future unloosed from her mother's rage. The two of us, middle-aged and ordinary, porch swing, minivan, children, etc. And because by then I hated her, or rather hated what I became clenched in her mind's fist, it was easy to sign the paperwork, to acknowledge and consent. Yes, it was my life. I wanted to 10-0, least of all my own septic mind. It was hardly a decision. I took the medicine. I rode unblinking into the one body I would bear. Love, it's true. I was young, a child. What did I know about what I deserve? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And yet, even so, here we are at the precipice of the new century of wildfire, century of war and perfect technology of war, where I live a happy life, where my love bakes bread in the morning, where the sunlight dances in her hair and my friends. But it's the edge of the century, remember? And you, sir, are my 5th grade teacher, a man not like any man I've met. I imagine, though can't know, you alone weeding the garden of your mind. Little rosebush, daffodil, dogwood tree run amok in the yard, gray cat, green eyes, crypt in the center, where lay your dead and beautiful friends, your friends who are so far from the life you have now, where you are, remember, surrounded by children, whom the news of the new president does not touch. Not yet, not at least in the labyrinth where they are the thing at the center, one weeping eye, matted fur. Sir, it's worse than you imagined. The birds outside are singing. And I understand it now, where you went that day, when you laid down forever on the floor of the classroom like you were dead, though you weren't dead, as we, the children, flew like so many terrible jeweled birds, headfirst into the window of the rest of our lives. This is another one with the same title, but I wrote it at about that time when that video of Ahmaud Arbery's murder was sort of circulating on Twitter. So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And when I surfaced from the latest weather, torrent of bad wind shuttering the blinds, so that I, or something like me, was lost and wandering again, the stale room where I fear was born, though how, it is impossible to say. When I surfaced, you were talking about children. A man, barely not a child, was dead, murdered, though it was months already between the scene and that name for it. The only way I know to outlast history is running. So that's what I do. I run. Even though even this action is a pantomime through which history, we all know it, speaks. A man particular is dead. And in the general body, the particular now, I am careful to keep my distance from the woman who is careful to smile at me in turn. When my father did not die, I didn't know. Nothing happened. And when he told me years later, when the scene found its name, I found something so like certainty it must have been. You don't have to, is what I heard him say to me. Live, you don't have to. Love, forgive me, for I believed it, believe. America is more and less itself than ever. Some days I run until my feet go numb. Some days I am the darkest thing I'll see. A kind of poem that I write is a poem that is more like an essay than a poem, I think. And this is one that I wrote when I was fixated on the sort of series of poems about roaches that Lucille Clifton wrote over the course of her career. So this is a poem or essay called Essay Regarding Lucille's Roaches that kind of borrows lines from Lucille Clifton and is about her, but is also about, I don't know, the experience of taking a trip. Essay Regarding Lucille's Roaches, with lines by Lucille Clifton. In her childhood kitchen, Lucille is wielding the broom-turned blade in her hand. She's becoming, in herself, a murderer. The roaches, suddenly, a red rain. She claims to have dreamt this moment only for a few nights and then not much, though the poems call her bluff. She turns and turns and turns to face what? Her cruel want of beauty, what she will do to claim what might be ours. Already the sun is high over a country that is, more than usual, not ours. My friends, nearly all of them around the table, still tangled in the sheets, making their way through dreams of our own particular heaven. H has been taking photographs that make us, maybe even me, impossibly beautiful. He says everyone who is not us wants to be here only because they cannot smell the shit wafting through the living room. I look at my friends' practiced laughter. Maybe. And yet I see them always this way. It happens despite me, and I pretend to deserve it. It's clear, of course, that the Roaches are, like Lucille, like us, Black, that nameless part where anything at all can be done to her. Of course, she'd want to kill, to kill. What is it, she asks, that makes us faceless to each other, otherwise steeped in late morning light? We come by plane and plane and plane, we, all of us, copper in the warming sky. We turn down news of home, that sad, mysterious country. We spend our government money, our corporate money, our American laughter, our currency. Twice, the waiter shakes his head, made anxious by our hunger. It's too much, I'm afraid, too much. Lucille names this what it plainly is, a global catastrophe. She sees them, the Roaches, bold with their bad selves. She calls them in our tongue. Finally, they turn from us, faithless at last, and walk in a long line away. At night, we move in one line through the city. P always in the lead, her glasses black, cannot see herself being seen. The rest of us practice staring back. We become one dark gaze. Behind the photographs, careful lighting, a half-faced cat stalking the veranda, mosquitoes drying red-black on the walls. Nothing will be done to us. Lucille, still in the mute hours of your girlhood. Lucille walking to school, carrying your father's voice, the note written in your practiced hand. She do not have to pledge to the flag, he cries, through you. When it means to her what it means to a white girl, then she may stand. But perhaps it is inevitable, you think, cruelty, a child made to speak in the voice of her family enemy. We know what your father did, what your country did, smiled all the time doing it. And Lucille, girl with red rain falling inside you, when given the choice between enemy and enemy, what did you do? Stood. You immediately stood. Okay, I'm just gonna read one more. Thank you for hanging out with my little lyrics. Yeah. This one is called My Life Closed Twice, which I think I stole from Emily Dickinson, although now I cannot remember. My life closed twice. Liz, I think her name was, the woman my mother brought me to. We played cards in her perfumed office, lavender, tulips, bowl of wax fruit. I was 10 and wanted to die. I don't know why I'm here again. I lived, obviously, I lived. When I was older, but still a child, not innocent but foolish, I looked up from my solitary suffering. I learned the history of men. I pointed to a spot on the map they rendered. I said, then, built my common life in a room at the end. If it's true what they say, that poetry is written with the knowledge of and against death, that it is a beacon, a bulwark, then love, I confess, I have been no poet. Outside, a hawk circles overhead. 4 cops circle a woman dressed all in red. I circle the apartment as you sleep happily in the next room. Just this once, I want so desperately to be proven wrong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Our next reader is Lan Samantha Chang. Lan Samantha Chang's new novel, The Family Chow, will be published by Norton in February 2022. She is the author of 2 previous novels, All is Forgotten, Nothing is Lost, and Inheritance, and a story collection, Hunger. Her short stories have appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, Ploughshares, and the Best American Short Stories. She's received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation in the American Academy in Berlin. Chang is the director of the University of Iowa's Writers Workshop. She lives with her husband and daughter in Iowa City, Iowa. Samantha, welcome.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to read, and thank you, Elizabeth and Nicole, and thanks, Ocean. It's a real privilege and pleasure to read with Cameron and Kate, and that was just an amazing poetry reading. I'm going to read from a passage that was published in the Kenyan Review, but in a slightly different sort of picky-headed, period form. So if there's like slight changes, that's what's going on. All right. The Dog Father. Entering the Fine Chow restaurant through the back door, James passes on his left the stairs to the basement, and on his right the restaurant office with its old television, murmuring, "Next is the kitchen, where nothing has changed in 15 years. There's the bulletin board covered with scraps of paper yellowing with age. These are notes Leo and Winnie Chow wrote to each other over the decades. When they fought, these missives were primary methods of communication. The other was to use the children as messengers. The notes are written sometimes in Chinese and sometimes in English in order to confuse the workers. There's also a schedule, now 18 years old, of Dago's high school orchestra rehearsals. From a time even before then, from before James was born, there's a list of frequently requested items in English and Chinese. Egg rolls, wontons, pot stickers, crab rangoons. What are these? Winnie, their mother, annotated in Chinese. Their father wrote underneath, wontons filled with cream cheese. Beef with broccoli. Following a scattershot statistical analysis, Winnie also compiled a list of things Americans liked. Large chunks of meat. Wontons and noodles together in the same soup. Pea pods and green beans, carrots, broccoli, and baby corn. No other vegetables. Ribs or chicken wings. Chicken with peanuts. Peanuts in everything. Chop suey. What is this? Leo wrote. I don't know, Winnie wrote. Anything with shrimp. The rest of them can't eat shrimp, she annotated. Be careful. Anything from the deep fryer. Anything with sweet and sour sauce. Anything with a thick brown sauce. And there is, of course, the things Americans didn't like. Meat on the bone, except ribs or chicken wings, rice porridge, and fermented soybeans. In a small fridge for employees, there are containers of stir-fried vegetables kept separate by Olan, the woman from Guangzhou who is one of the 3 outside kitchen employees and who doesn't eat meat. Beers for JJ, the second chef, and for Lulu, the other server, who, after years of silent courtship, have unexpectedly gone to San Francisco together over the holidays, and Dago's personal stash of pork with zhouzai and noodles. James heats a pile of pork and noodles on the stove. He's starving. As he transfers the food into a bowl, a pounding noise comes from below. It's the sound of his father, Leo, Big Chow, coming up the stairs, footsteps that reverberate and thump with the authority of a man larger than he actually is. To these footsteps is added deep and resonant grumbling. Profanity, growing more audible until, when he reaches the top of the stairs, a full question detaches itself and sings into the kitchen in a ringing baritone. Who the fuck is coming to clean up half an hour after close? James abandons his dinner, edges into the hallway. Baba, it's me. He is the only son who still calls Leo Baba, which Dago shortened to Ba and Ming changed to Dad. Sometimes his brothers refer to Leo as Aw gee, Pops. This is one of the only jokes they share. Oh, it's you, Leo yells, emerging into the hall. I smell those disgusting Jotai noodles and I thought it was your worthless brother. But it's you! He grins, delighted, and claps James on the shoulder. He's a sturdy, vigorous man with tadpole eyes and a dark, strong-featured face thickened by food and living. James catches a whiff of cooking grease, pipe tobacco, and stale clothes. Your hands are cold, he says, pushing away an image of the man in Union Station. I was in the basement freezer room, picking out something for tomorrow. Over Leo's shoulder is slung a restaurant grocery bag. You shouldn't go down there when no one else is in the building. The freezer door locks automatically. It's not up to code, Baba. It's fine, his father says. Jerry Stern worked his magic with the city inspector. I told your big brother, study law, but he doesn't listen, majors in music. Now baby Mozart's paying off his loans, cooking for Americans. Like the rest of the community, Leo uses the term American to describe any outsider. The term is half ironic, half utilitarian. James is disappointed Dago isn't there to welcome him home. He doesn't dare ask his brother, where his brother is, doesn't want to provoke him. But Leo, guessing his thoughts, says, your worthless brother is making out with his new girlfriend, or getting ready for his big showdown at the nunnery tomorrow. He gestures to the hall. Come to my office. I got something strong for you. The office is crammed with detritus from 35 years of business, including an ancient adding machine and a naked, fake Christmas tree. James sits in his mother's old chair, his father in the recliner. Leo catches James' eye and shoots him a flare of approval. Despite all Ming has just said, James feels a metabolic, answering spark of happiness, kinship, recognition. Try this. Leo Chow holds a tumbler to James. Did you get this from those guys you know in Chicago? James asks, eyeing the unmarked bottle on Leo's desk. Yeah, this is the real thing. As James lifts the glass, a hideous, pungent odor of fruity, rotten socks pervades his sinuses. He squeezes his eyes shut, sips, and let the awful taste spread over his tongue. Ha! Look at that! His father gestures at the television. There's nothing on the screen except a fenced patio with an open gate. Then an animal lumbers onto the patio, sniffing at the fence. It's a yearling bear, burnished brown. There's no mistaking its thick, furry body, the bulk of its rear end, its heavy, yet clownish, rolling walk. A small, stocky black creature torpedoes down a staircase. The creature barks wildly, growling and snapping at the bear, which, after a moment's stunned confrontation, rises up on its hind legs in dismay. Like a black streak, the dog chases the bear up and down the patio, lunging and nipping at its heels. Panicking, the bear clambers over the fence. The dog, tail up, remains in the patio. Ha! Leo emits a deep belly laugh. You see that? Just like Elf, French bulldog, best breed in the world. James hands him back the tumbler. Baba, he says, you know Doggo isn't worthless. He can really cook. In the pause that follows, James wonders if he's angered his father, but when Leo Chow speaks, his tone is genial. Maybe not worthless, he says, but he has an inferiority complex. You American-born Chinese, so timid and brainwashed, will do anything for a woman who'll give you a good lay. Did his father just change the subject? Or is it all part of the same argument? James doesn't know. Leo hands the tumbler back. James takes another tiny, terrible sip. He is timid with girls. Is this why he's halfway through his freshman year in college and still a virgin? All you ABCs, you think you're not here first since you have different eyes and dicks. You're not good enough for fucking around. You got it backwards. We came to America to colonize the place for ourselves. That means spreading seed, equal opportunity for fucking. You know what the biggest disappointment of my life? Seeing my oldest son pussy whipped by one white woman. He frowns at the TV. Its dim light flickers over his features. My stinking son. Brainwashed by his mother and teachers. They say, you're special. You can do anything you want. Nobody can do anything they want. You think I want this dog's life? No, I do what I have to do. But my oldest son, he's trying to find himself. What's to find? Decides to be a musician. Then he leaves the East Coast with his tail between his legs. He's wasted years of life. He's amazing in the kitchen, James says. They watch images move across the screen. Baba, he says, if you can be anything you want to be in America, then why can't you do anything you want? And what if you don't want to be big and rich? What if you want to be small? Is that what you want? Snorts Leo. James struggles. How to explain to his father what he wants? It's something he's only just begun to put into words, and only to himself. I'm not ambitious like Ming, he says. I don't want to be super rich or buy expensive real estate. I'm not ambitious like Dago either. I don't need to be as creative as he is or to make people happy. It's not that I don't want to be interested in my job. I do want to help people, but I mostly want to feel small, to be a small piece in the big mystery of everything. He stops to think, trying to explain his own curious desire. I want to get married and have kids and a dog. I want to walk the dog in the morning, go to work, come home at night. Mostly what I want is, well, an ordinary life. An ordinary life. Leo smiles in the half-dark. Blood sacrifice, he yells, startling James. I came over in 1972, a pioneer, breaking land. I sacrificed myself. Also, my sons could be magnificent. I did all this, only to be a dog father. Is anyone grateful? We're all grateful. I'm going to die, dog father. I'm going to die, Leo yells, glaring up at James. His bellow thins to a theatrical mew. How is it possible? I'll die so far away from home. The face of the man at the train station appears before him. James closes his eyes. Don't say that, Baba. Leo huffs. Invisible sparks fly toward the television. Don't worry, he says. I'm not going to die. No, Baba, James says. Although he knows this is impossible, he believes it. You'll never die. Not me. Leo smiles. Ah, James, my good boy. Not my most accomplished boy. Not my most talented boy. But you're my boy. You love me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Samantha. It's so good to hear you read that. All right, we have one more reader, Kate Marvin. Kate Marvin was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in Potomac, Maryland. She's the author of 3 books of poems, The World's Tallest Disaster, Fragment of the Head of a Queen, and Oracle, which was named by the New York Times as one of the best poetry books of 2015. Marvin teaches poetry writing in the Stone Coast College MFA program and is a professor of English at the College of Staten Island. A recent Guggenheim Fellow, she lives in Scarborough, Maine. Event Horizon, her 4th collection, is forthcoming for Copper Canyon Press in 2022. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I've always wanted to have poems in the Kenyan Review, and so it was really exciting to me when these poems were taken and accepted. So thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Ocean. It's awesome to read with you, Samantha and Cameron. It's of course, not going to be easy to follow up on you folks, but I'm going to read 4 poems. I hope that I think they speak a little bit to the work that's already been read. And I'm not going to talk much. My father died a few years ago. I wasn't crazy about him, you could say, right? And he was a military intelligence analyst. So that's kind of what you need to know for this first poem. My father's daughter. It was lonely like that, sitting there, ugly like. Sat down sudden on a stoop and lit a cigarette. She wore a beard of smoke. She heaved with evidence. The surveillance van hauling bones of Cold War enemies twisted round the corner of Moody onto Morning, its wires within conducting an analysis of the outrageous slowing of her pulse, marking now her departure from sense into the freeze. The neighbor's curtains twitched with evidence. A middle-aged lady with her head in her lap. Across the street, curtains twitched with neighbors. Who does that? She once cried on the subway. This was way worse. A young woman was pushing her baby down the same street, past a stoop upon which her bent legs were bent, her head dropping its dead weight against the soft denim, sheathing her knees. Dogs moved jubilant, autumn thralled, pleased to be alongside so many legs. Head set heavy as a metal plate atop her bent knees, she sensed the plastic flowers stuck in the window boxes across the street were menacing the gods. All the world bent on a limb was elbowing in with its analyst crouch, hinting at its covert codes, tapes pregnant to unspool sobs she could spill down the step of her stoop, leak onto the streets. How she'd liquefy dogs' happy howls as they lap the greasy pools of her discontent. She sits now on a stoop atop bones like shards, her flabby ass, as his laugh comes back up her throat, thinking back to a dinner party when she was 10, his one friend from work chortling as he poured his face into a glass. The poison gas, my favorite project. She looks like anybody. And these are poems that are sort of like stuck throughout the book. This is from the book that's just coming out. And this is called, I guess this maybe should have like a little bit of a trigger warning. It's kind of about like domestic violence. It's called In the Future, a Robot Will Take Your Job. It's not my job to make you happy, though it was my job to make my last husband happy. Despite the fact I was paying him through the nose with my student loans and sending him swan bouquets at great expense, their intricately lettered placards pleading, "Please don't hit me again." I still can't stop smoking. Sometimes it feels like I'm standing on that back porch, staring out at the lawn from my middle-aged face, squinting into all the gray hair looking back at me from the clouds of my future. I am bones. Bones crack inside a body like glass in a sack, rattle shards against a dresser drawer after a body is flung from a bed. He had been laid off. The toll this took made his face undertake a dance of tremors. One eye a twitch blinked, the other winked, stuck on its lie like a typewriter key stuck on a letter. Now he is asleep. Darkness seeps from out the room into the hall. Hands press air to meet the bed, feel it out in the soft black. Now I fold myself beside him. Dreams wait on lavender cusp of cloud breeding gods. Then two hands sudden press, elbow edges jangle, my tailbone landing hard on wood. Why not just go ahead and fashion my coccyx into a keychain? Stop blaming the economy. Who pays for husbands anyway? Mine needed a job not to hit me. He lost his job. Then there were no jobs. In the future, a robot will take his job. It would take a robot to make him happy. It will take a robot to make his robot happy. Seriously grim. The next one was about my kid. And this is about, they pop up in the book intermittently. And this is about when they were pretty little. They were like 6 years old or 7 years old. It's called Friend of the Flies. And this is one of the 4 poems I'm reading that appears in this issue. Friend of the Flies. My weirdling child indentures herself to collecting sticks in something called a garden that is barely a garden yet full of flies. Watching her from up high, my head stuck out a window's frame, I see no great violations taken place. She is merely industrious, stockpiling the many thin reeds she calls flutes on a wrought iron patio table. Her piles are neat. It's the flies she's faithful to. She strokes their wings, makes this space a space that she insists is a home for them. They are, she insists, her friends, and she is eager to get back to them. She explains while taking a break, the spoon soup up to her lips, her dirt-furrowed brow tensing kitchen air. I need to be out there. So down the stairs she goes again, gone for some hours. I recall that afternoon I was lessoned on how to ground a winged ant that had landed on the bench on which we sat when she stopped to rest after I watched her shaky progress down a path on new rollerblades. And she asked, as if offering a glass of iced tea, did I want her to ground the creature? What did she mean? The ant? Yes, you pull off its wings, she says. That's what grounding means, she replies cheerfully. I ask her, how might you feel if some larger being leaned down, pulled your arms off? Then she laughs. The friend of the flies has had a good afternoon. Now she lies like a very small queen, so dead asleep, mouth puffed ajar, the tooth that is constantly 1 second from being lost, clanking in the wind of her baby breath. Tomorrow, some anthill will find itself the object of grave misfortune, as my daughter will see to save it, gather stones to surround it to prevent the onslaught of rain or a terrible boy rival's hands. Don't touch that, I'm always saying. Don't touch that. And then she pushes her hand, her nails never moons, her slivers black crudded up with grime, into my large hand, which receives her as ocean anemones allow sunfish to swim among their tendrils, so as to feel the softness of her small fingers. For oh, how I love my friend of the flies. So this past year, I think it was in May, my AFAB kid transitioned and is trans non-binary. So my final poem in the book was, I wanted to move them over into, who they are in the book. And it mixes up a bunch of like, there's kind of the domestic violence stuff in there too. And it's called, it's in 3 parts, and it's called They, Them, Theirarchy. 1. It didn't matter that my daughter turned into a sun and then back again into a flame and cut their hair off and flew up into the sky with a burst of feathers I'd used to dust away the cobwebs. Or that I'd taken to dressing as a battered women's hotline, that my stalker was trying to pretend we'd never stood before that judge in Essex County who stated, there is no reason you ever need to talk to her again. Instead, writing me an email as if we remain friends. Or that woman who ran the session on domestic abuse, or that the woman who ran the session on domestic abuse said it only takes a minute of stopping oxygen from getting to the brain to cause brain damage. Gestures, her hands grabbing at her throat on the Zoom screen. I too have been strangled. Women's faces collect in rows of chocolate box squares on my laptop. Each one may as well be me. We look back at one another. 2. I was curled up inside my own daughter, waiting for her to ask for a razor. She was getting to be that age. Her fingernails were long and elegant as spoons, not gnawed like mine. Her teeth I love a lot, yellow ivory tablets behind plush lips. She had inherited the nostrils of my grandmother. They were tiny and imperious as those of a hippopotamus. In fact, the one prayer I'd made was for her to not end up with this particular nose. But when I saw it on her, I saw she pulled it off. It was bitterly, cruelly cute. A challenge because if her nose was stuffy, folks could see right up it. She was not a feminine daughter either, which suited me better. She'd sliced the ice skates right off her ankles and refused to dance. Her hands, however, were almost unnaturally feminine, the digits slender, nails tapered. It's the hands that will give them away. 3. My daughter is gone. She snuffed her name. It meant light. I spent months thinking it up. When they were 4, the man I was with told me he thought my kid had a bad streak. This coming from a blackout drunk who spent his days looking out from his second-story window, chain smoking, casting terrible stares down at me whenever I pulled into the driveway. They can't remember any of this, nor the day I scooped them up into my arms, put them in the car, and we drove away. Perhaps it feels like this to them, like they are driving away from something dangerous, their name. A name becomes one's face. Sliding the wand, the nurse said, "I think it's a girl." Now women's faces collect like tears in a spoon. Who in their right mind wants to be poured in along with them? We don't keep enough mirrors in this house. They are more beautiful than they realize. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Kate. I feel a little bit flayed. Goodness, those were beautiful readings. Thank you all for being with us and sharing the work and being here to celebrate the launch of the issue. That was gorgeous and wonderful. It's like Thanksgiving. I feel full. I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Dark, who's going to help us with the Q&A right now.
Yes, thank you all. That was phenomenal. I won't repeat everything that Nicole said, but I'm thinking it. It is our Q&A time. So audience, please, if you have questions, let us know you have a question like Elliot just did. She wrote, "I have a question for Samantha." So in just a moment, I'm going to call on Elliot. Follow Elliot's example. Or you can type your question into the chat if you want us to ask it for you. So I will start with Elliot.
Hi, Sam. I was wondering if you could, am I right in understanding that the Family Chow is inspired by or almost a retelling of the brothers Karamazov? And if so, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you worked with your Dostoevsky inspiration in this novel.
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I never read that book. And then I was 40 and I was teaching undergraduates, and I had a student who was a Russian literature major who loved the book, and so I read it. And then I immediately became obsessed. And, I was so obsessed that I would, I held these non-credit classes once I started teaching at the workshop, where I sort of forced people to sign up and promise they were going to read the, 750-page book, and then meet with me for like hours at a time so that I could indulge my desire to talk about the book with, smart people. And but I wasn't writing at all during this time because I was busy. I wrote another book, totally different book. And then at some point, maybe 2013, so it was maybe 8 years after I had first started, I don't know, thinking about the book, that I realized that this 100 pages that I'd written 8 years before could actually become this book. And I ditched most of them. I think I saved some of the pages. Some of the lines that I read are from the very earliest bit in 2005 that I wrote about a character who's this, tyrannical, charismatic father figure. And I realized that was Leo Chow, and that Leo Chow was Karamazov, the father. And so that was sort of the beginning. I had that father character, and then I realized what I wanted to do was write an homage. And so the first thing I had to do was put the book aside and not read it for the entire time, because it was such an overpowering masterpiece, I would never have been able to write my book. So that was sort of the beginning of it, and then I just worked on it for 6 or 7 years. But thanks for asking. I mean, I love that book.
Ocean.
Also, the Family Chow's out on February 1st, right, Sam? So we can all buy it.
Yes, thanks.
Ocean, you have a question.
Yes, I was curious about what does writing community mean to all three of you at the moment, or what is something that inspire you in the community?
I'm happy to speak to that. So I wrote my last book in a really different way, and that I really was kind of strapped for time, and I joined a writing group. I actually created a writing group with a few local poets, and so we met every week, and we like submitted poems every single week. Like we submit poems no matter what. And I basically wrote this entire book of poems in that way. And so it was. I don't think I would have written this book if it were not for Colin Chaney and Jefferson Nowicki and Catherine Larson. So because eventually I looked, I was like, oh, I've kind of amassed a lot, you know, and so I'm just like, when you ask that question, I'm freaking grateful for my writing community. You know, it's like, for me, it's really what's kept me going this time around. In the past, I had my readers, but this time it's really it's knowing that I can write for people who are really open to whatever I put out there and honest.
Yeah, I heard in your question, I mean, I think you said like now or something. I heard in your question like a question about like, what does it mean to do community now that we are all little boxes on the screen? And I guess, yeah, I think that what's been interesting to me about, or not interesting, but what has been true to me about the sort of pandemic time is that it turns out that my writing community, so I like so many people of my generation sort of came to poetry through slam. I came to love poetry through slam. And that very much is like we all have to be in a room together in order to like feel the way that a poem moves in a room. But then we all sort of grew up and we left the city that we were all in, and it meant that so much of my community has been virtual for so long. And so I think that for me, like the experience of everybody turning to Zoom and turning to other sort of virtual forms of community making, like it's actually I think made my ties to my people a little bit stronger, because I don't feel like, oh, we have to like be in a plane and go hang out with each other. There are all of these other ways that we have been able to share our work and books in progress and stuff like this. So yeah, it's been a learning about how to keep communities intact.
I feel really indebted to the community I found when I was in my mid-20s and decided to become a writer and moved sort of to the middle of nowhere to Iowa. And I'd never taken writing workshops before. I was suddenly surrounded by people who really cared about writing. And I think communities like this can be found in many places. For me, it was like finding a family for the for the first time in my life. Even though I'm close to the members of my original family, none of them was particularly interested in my writing. Like I would leave my journal lying around just accidentally because I was a like sloppy person, but no one would ever read it. And the reason that no one ever wanted to know what my inner thoughts were. It was kind of exciting then to be um, in in this place, and I feel that way now. I feel that my students and colleagues are a community for me, and I'm super grateful to them. And um, yeah, I think Cameron's remarks about learning to make the community exist apart from geography really are fascinating and ring true with me. Um, and it's it's so important. Um, that's about it.
Yeah,
I will.
can I ask just
Come on,
one
Kate.
more
Yep.
thing?
Yep.
I'm thinking about just literary magazines, and when I first started, like when I'd have poems in magazines, when I was like just starting, I would get really excited to see my poems with other people's poems, people who I'd never met but whose poems I loved. And I feel like that Zoom kind of makes that possible for a reading. You know, it's like you can like so, yeah, just appreciating it.
Yeah, I feel like I've been in so many really great Zoom reading rooms that could never have happened in a different medium. That's been, yeah.
So true. It's one of those gifts.
Yeah,
Um,
I love these meetings to introduce the new issue.
Thank you. I see a hand up. Is it Analia? Okay.
So I'm writing for the Kenyan Collegian. So obviously my audience is Kenyan students, many of whom are writers. And so I wanted to ask all three of you what advice you would give to burgeoning or young writers.
There's a lot of advice. I mean, like, I think, like, first of all, obviously read as much as you can, but I think it's important to write a lot and not just write, poems or whatever genre you have, but like to just like write in journals and write letters and understand that reading and writing are all part of that muscle, like they help that muscle. And then also just, not to be easily discouraged, to know why you do it and to not just do it to please other people, but hopefully will get some, some pleasure out of it, right?
I second everything you said, especially not doing it to please other people and to get pleasure out of it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I think that it's about pleasure, but I think that it's also about remembering that, I mean, I think this is like an obvious and basic thing to say, but I think that the reason that people are writers is because writing is a way of learning something new about yourself, about the world, whatever. I think that I know that when I mean, I am still young, but when I was even younger, right, I always sort of approached writing as if I had to know in advance where I was going to end up, or I had to know in advance what I wanted my audience to take away. And I think that something that has been very helpful for me to learn and remember is that I think that my best writing comes when I don't know yet where I'm going to go. And that the point of the writing is the discovering that. So it's easier to not get in my way if I don't feel like I have to know where I'm going.
Thank you so much.
I'll ask mine because it's sort of connected to this as well. But before I do, I will encourage audience members to raise your hands or put questions in the chat. But tied to this idea of writing community, and then also, what you're writing. As Analia mentioned, this is a room full of writers, be they students at Kenyan or writers or Writers Workshop participants. I see a lot of people there. But we at the KR are huge fans of writing prompts. And we've actually started to put one out every Sunday on Twitter. So I'm wondering about your relationship with writing prompts, if they have served you well, and specifically if there's one you can think of in particular that kind of got you through a period of drought or not knowing what to write. I know we've talked about this period where we're all kind of isolated in all of our places. So what role have writing prompts played in your careers?
I can answer that. I actually found writing prompts to be really helpful when I was starting to work on this novel. Mostly because some of the characters just walked right into the room, like Leo Chow just sort of climbed the stairs and he was there. But I had to figure out some of the other characters, and I used like the lamest, most pedestrian things, like how I feel about God is blank, 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 blank. And I would do that for all three of the sons. And I would do that, and it made me feel good. It made me feel like I'd done work. And I actually had, like, when I look back at my early logs for this project, which took place over, it took me 15 years to write this project, but I can see that just using these very basic sort of fill in the blank kind of prompts really helped me see the people who became the characters in this book. And I don't have any brilliant prompt to share because the easiest, simplest, dumbest things worked for me.
Mm-hmm. I used to really resent being made by one of my former professors, Don Bogan, who was here. I think he left. He would have us imitate other people's poems, like really imitate them, and it made me very angry. But I think I make my students do it, and it's very helpful because you really learn, okay, why does someone use this line, etc. But I actually am going to share with you, I just remembered the very best prompt I ever got, and it was from Andrew Hudgens. And basically he said, once the poem is completely finished, boil out 30% of it, right? And at the time I was not, I basically, I don't know what my problem was, but I had like all kinds of attitude, and I didn't believe him, right? And so, but I had to do it for an assignment, right? And turn it in. And I went and I did it, and it totally improved my poem. And so that's like, I see so many poems that just could be like, have just 30% boiled out. And so that's the best prompt, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, I think that similarly, I profoundly resent prompts, even though well, writing prompts anyway, even though I don't know how else to teach people how to write. But what I do like, I mean, because it sounds to me that that is not so much a writing prompt as is a revision prompt, and I love revision prompts. And I think that honestly, like the most helpful one that anybody has ever given to me is very silly, but it was just sort of like, okay, now write you finished your poem, now write it again from memory. And
Sure.
and now that is sort of that's like the metric I use to know whether or not a poem is done, right? Like if I can write it from memory, that means that whether or not it's good, like there's nothing else that I can do with it because I can't get back inside of it. So I find revision prompts to be really helpful, even though I am still resentful about writing prompts.
I mean, I think just like whenever I see a poem that makes me angry and I hate it, and I feel like it's not doing what I expect it to do, is I'm like, okay, well then you have to go write that poem. So I find that like, working off of something is very, very helpful.
Yeah, those are some good notes to take. Other questions? We're sort of wrapping up our time, but we could definitely have a couple more if they are there. All right.
I have a question.
Okay, go Nicole.
I'm curious what you all are reading right now.
I'm rereading The Brothers Karamazov. I couldn't read it for 5 years or so. Actually, since 2015 or something, I stopped. And so now I have the opportunity to take the time to do that. And it's a huge pleasure. Of course, it's, very intimidating and shaming and because it's so good, but still, like, what an amazing piece of work.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I just got a puppy, and I've been reading dog training books. Pretty much all I've been reading, just like as a means to like save myself from like the snapping jaws and everything. So
Yeah, I feel like during the semester, I can only ever read the things that I'm making my students read. And because I mostly don't teach creative writing, that's just like a lot of theory. So that's what I'm reading. But I think that my poems is sort of, make this obvious, but I've been listening to A Tale of Two Cities again on audiobook, which is kind of like reading, but not really.
yeah, it's reading. It counts as reading. I listen to a lot of books while I'm driving, and I feel like I can absorb them better actually, because no one's interrupting me.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that I'm bad at learning that way. So it mostly just passes through me, except for just like snippets, but that's really all I need. Oh, A Tale of Two Cities is what I'm listening to.
Are there any more questions? Shall we close out the evening? You all, thank you for being here, for celebrating with us. Thank you all editors who are there, not on camera, but present in the room. Thank you for your help in putting this book together, but thank you also for being here to celebrate this evening. Thank you contributors who are here. Thank you, Elizabeth, for managing everything and for letting it proceed so beautifully. Thank you, Ocean, for all of your good help. Elizabeth, are there any other comments that you want to make?
Yeah, I'll just remind everyone to take a look at the chat where Ocean has placed a number of helpful links, including the Kenyan Review Bookshop page where you can buy books by our authors tonight. Also, Ocean, could you put the Kenyan Review video page link in there? This is where you can find this event in about a week and a half. It will be on the Kenyan Review video page for you to watch again.
Cool.
And then please also look at the Kenyan Review Reading Series page where we will be posting future events, just like this one, including, I saw someone asking for more issue launches. They are coming, so stay tuned and keep tuning in to see what we're up to next.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
This is awesome.
Thank you, everyone.